Welcome, scholars, to Lesson 4.2, Graphing Slope-Intercept Form. So first we have to know what slope-intercept form is, and that is y equals mx plus b, where m and b are going to be numbers, and they're going to be specifically our slope, so m is slope, and b is y-intercept. Slope is what we found last lesson. It's the slope of the line. It's our rise or run. And our y-intercept is that point that is on the y-axis. It's where our line crosses the y-axis. So there's a little definition here, the same thing that we just wrote above, and also a picture. And we're going to use this in order to graph our equation. So example number 1 says find the slope and the y-intercept of the graph of each linear equation. So first we're just identifying slope and y-intercept of these equations that are already in slope-intercept form. So in letter A, it looks like 3 is in our m spot, right? So our slope, or m, is 3. And our y-intercept, or our b, is going to be -4. See how it's -4? So that's going to be the same as adding a -4. So our y-intercept is -4. I use m interchangeably with slope, and I'm using b interchangeably with y-intercept because they are the same thing. All right, so for letter B, this one does look slightly different because there's just y equals a number and there's no variable, there's no x. So we have to assume that if there's no x, that means it must be multiplied by 0. So our m, if there is no x, must be 0, because 0 times x is going to give us 0. And if nothing's there, the imaginary 0. And then our y-intercept, our b, is still going to be that 6.5. And if you remember from our last lesson, we went over there was a picture of the different slopes: positive, negative, 0, and undefined. So a 0 slope is actually going to be a horizontal line. So let's go on to letter C. So our slope here is -4. Again, how am I finding these? I'm just looking. So actually, let's go back to A. So if I were to write y equals mx plus b, see how 3 is in the m place? That's how I got m was 3. -4 is in the b place, so b is -4. For this one, I'm going to write it again on top, y equals mx plus b. So see how m is -4, and see how our b is 2. And that's it. For this first one, we're just identifying, because I want us to get used to just knowing what m and what b are when we're looking at equations in slope-intercept form. Now we are going to go in. Oh no, sorry, there's a try it. So go ahead and pause the video and see if you can do this one on your own. Go ahead and pause now. All right, so hopefully you wrote down the answer. So our m, now see if you're right. Our m is -6 and our b is +1. So if you got that right, perfect, keep moving. If not, maybe you want to rewind or come ask me for help. All right, so for example number 2, we're not graphing just yet. Now we've identified the slope, the y-intercept, and now we still have to actually rewrite the equation sometimes, right? If they're not in slope-intercept form, we want to make it into slope-intercept form so that we can graph it easily. So let's say we have this equation, 2x plus 8y equals -16. We need to rewrite this as our y equals mx plus b. And let's look at these steps over here. So it says first cancel out the term with the x. And actually, before we even get into the steps, what do we always do when we solve equations? We draw our line down the equals. All right, now we can cancel out the term with the x. That would be this 2x. So I'm going to subtract 2x from both sides. All right, and I've done that. So now let's go ahead and simplify those. That means these cancel out, and I have 8y. And since I want it to be into this, again, slope-intercept form, which is y equals mx plus b, see how the x is going to come before the constant, right? The term with the x is going to come before the term with the constant. So I'm going to actually write -2x first and then -16. instead of writing negative 16 minus 2x, because this gets me closer to this form right here. And now I need to cancel out the coefficient of y. That means I'm going to divide by 8 right here. That means I also have to divide by 8 the other side. And then I'm going to cancel out those 8s, and I get y. And now over here, when I'm dividing by 8, I'm going to divide each term by 8. When I say term, I hope we know what that means. The term is basically negative 2x is a term, negative 16 is our term. Anything that is an expression or a number that we're adding and subtracting, those are our terms. So first we're going to do negative 2x divided by 8. That reduces to negative 1/4. And that x is still there. Again, how did I get negative 1/4? Well, negative 2 divided by 8, let's write it over here to the side. Negative 2 divided by 8, that's what this is saying. When I have even numbers, I can divide them by 2. So I'm going to divide both of them by 2. 2 divided by 2, and this is still a negative right here. 2 divided by 2 is 1, and 8 divided by 2 is 4. So I have negative 1/4. And that x is still there, so I bring the x down. Now my second term is this negative 16. So what's negative 16 divided by 8? That would be negative 2. And I'm done because I've simplified, and that's it. And actually, it doesn't really ask this, but let's go ahead and identify the slope and the y-intercept. So my slope would be negative 1/4, and my y-intercept would be negative 2. All right, so if you can go ahead and pause the video and try this next one, go ahead. All right, so let's see if you're right. So first, I'm gonna go ahead and draw my line. And then it says step 1, cancel out the term with the x. So I'm going to subtract 3x from both sides. Done. And now when I do that, I cancel these out. I am left with negative 4y. Don't drop that negative sign. I'm going to put the negative 3x first and then add 36. Because 36 minus 3x is the same thing as negative 3x plus 36, because of the commutative property. And now I'm going to go ahead and cancel out that coefficient of y. So that would be negative 4. So I'm going to divide by negative 4. And now I have to simplify. So that means I'm going to cross these out. I'm left with y. Now I'm going to divide each term by negative 4. So negative 3 divided by negative 4 is positive 3/4. Don't forget that x that's there. And then 36 divided by negative 4 is negative 9. So minus 9. And I'm done. And my m is 3/4. And my b is negative 9. And now we can go ahead and start graphing. So our last example is to graph the line with the equation y equals 2/3 x plus 1. So what I'm going to do, and actually it's very simple because now we've already identified our m and our b, and so we use that in order to graph, and you'll see how. So first, I go ahead and identify it. So I'm going to write it over here. Our m is 2/3, and our b is positive 1. And now, after we've identified the slope and y-intercept, we're going to just plot the y-intercept because we have to start with one point, and we know that our point is going to be crossing the y-axis, or our line, sorry, is crossing the y-axis at the point of 1. And actually, technically, our y-intercept is going to be 0, 1. So any y-intercept has our x-coordinate as 0, and you'll see why. So y-intercept, I'm going to look on the y-axis. I'm going to look for 1 on the y-axis. That's right here. So I'm going to plot my point at 1. And you see how my x-coordinate is 0, my y-coordinate is 1. So this is going to be 0, 1. And that's just to show you the order to pair for it. You don't really have to write that. You can just find whatever number this is, you find it on the y-axis and put your point. And then that is done. Now we're going to use our slope, our rise and run, to plot our next point. So if our slope is 2/3, that means we're going to rise 2 and run 3. Because remember, slope is rise over run. So we're going to rise 2. So I'm going to go up 2, 1, 2. And then I'm going to run 3. 1, 2, 3. So my next point is right here. All right, I'll do that one more time. So I'm going to use the slope, which is rise over run, to plot my next point. So again, if I'm starting at the y-intercept and my slope is 2/3, that means I'm going to rise 2 and run 3. So up 2 to the right 3. Now I have my next point, and now I'm going to just connect those 2 points with a straight line. As straight as you can make it. And that's it. Let's say you don't have a fraction, like let's say you just have the number 4, let's say. 4 or any number can be written as a fraction. That would just be 4/1. So just a little note, if you do not have a fraction, you have a whole number, you gotta make it into a fraction by putting it over 1, and then you could still use that rise over run to plot your next point. So we've connected the 2 points and we are done. So let's go ahead and try it. And look at that, we have one without a fraction. So go ahead and try it. Pause the video here, see if you can do it. All right, so let's see if you're right. So first, let's identify the slope and the y-intercept. Our slope is -2, which I said we can make it as a fraction as -2/1. -2/1. And then our y-intercept is just 2. So we've identified the slope and y-intercept. Now we have to plot the y-intercept, which is 2. So we're going to find 2 on the y-axis. So we've done that. Now we're going to use our slope, our rise and run, to plot the next point. So -2/1. That means, so the negative is only going to apply to either the -2 or -1. I would apply it to always the -2, like always the numerator, to make it easier. So that -2 means I'm going to go down 2 and over 1. So -2/1 means I'm going to go down 2, because it's negative, down 2, and then to the right 1. And my next point is right here. Again, one more time, rise over run. So -2 would be down 2 and to the right 1. Now, let's say you did up 2 and to the left 1. That would still be correct because, it's, like, I'll even show you. So up 2, and then the -1 would be to the left 1. So that'd still be here. So see how it's still a straight line. I just think it's easier just to always rise first and always put that negative with the rise. So basically always go from left to right and just go up or down and then always go to the right. I think that's easier, but it is totally up to you. So we've done that, and now we just connect our 2 points, and that is it. All right, and I think that's it for this lesson. So go ahead and, try it on Delta Math. Let me know if you have any questions, and good luck.